I do want to begin by welcoming everyone to our session. I'm Amy Slagle. I'm from Iowa State University, and I currently serve as the chair of the Basic Course Division, which is why I was asked to monitor this program today and facilitate our discussion. As suggested by the program, we do believe that the health of any organization is supported by creating opportunities to learn about its history and to reflect on the nature of its mission, the issues it is facing, and the future opportunities and challenges that we will be facing together. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce the illustrious members of our panel. And I think I can trust myself to actually do so in order instead of in order in the program here. I'm going to start furthest from me, where we have Steve Hunt from Illinois State University. Next to him is Sherry Simons from Illinois State University. Then we have Bill Seiler from the University of Nebraska. Then we have Joe Sprague from San Jose State. Then we have Sherry Moriali. Is everybody waving as they're introduced? Wave to the camera today. Then we have Paul Nelson from North Dakota State University, Don Yoder from the University of Dayton, Barb Hugenberg from Kent State University, Melissa Beal from Northern Iowa, David Worley from Indiana State University, and right here is Sam Wallace from the University of Dayton. Welcome to all of you. I must make an exception to my typical no excused absences policy with basic course issues, and I, in fact, have to excuse Deanna Selnow from the University of Kentucky, who was listed as a participant in this program, but is double booked right at this time because she is a candidate for second vice president, and this is the Meet the Candidates hour. In order to explore the past, present, and future of the Basic Course Division, and really the Basic Course itself, we have circulated a series of 5 questions to put to the panelists. In order to be sure that we leave time for your input as well, we won't have everyone speak to each of the questions, if I can control that. As we turn to the first question, I'm reminded that yesterday there was a panel devoted to discussion of the 40th anniversary of the Basic Course Survey, and in the footnotes of that study, I was interested to see that when the survey was conducted first in 1970 and then in 1974, there was actually no use of the term Basic Course. It was called the first course in speech in those articles. A clear signal to me that I have much to learn still about the history of our division. And that is really where our conversation begins. What is the historical development of the Basic Course Division within the communication discipline and at NCA? And I've asked Paul and Melissa and Don to add some insight into our history. And you'll just have to move those microphones around.
Paul, you're really old. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be the oldest one here. Then I looked around and found out I'm not even close to being the oldest one. So here, I was going to tell you a little bit about the prehistory before it even got to NCA. But now there are other people along here who know the same history. But what happened was that in the middle 60s or thereabouts at Kansas, where Bobby Patton was, and their textbook authors started thinking about having conventions. And they started the Midwest Basic Course Conference. It was Big Ten plus 2. The 2 were Missouri and Kansas. And then that group met for a number of years, but it grew because everybody who had a great big basic course or everybody who had written a textbook started wanting to join in on this, and so did almost every book rep. So pretty soon it became quite a large group. But that predates anything that was happening before we became anything big in NCA, is that it grew out of this Midwestern organization. Now the people can correct my view of history.
Oh, that's right on. For the first time, you've been right on. That's good.
Can you hear?
I believe we started, it's hard to find this information because there are no archives that I can know of that exist, but I believe we started out as an interest group at SCA, which grew out of the Midwest Basic Course Directors Conference. And then we became a committee, and I was president, czar, or something of the committee in 92, and we started the process for changing to a commission, and we had to get a whole bunch of signatures. I remember IDD group was very generous in signing our petition And we got enough signatures that we moved as a commission in 94, and as far as I can figure out, we became a division around 2001. And each step along the way, why that becomes important for us as a group is each step along the way indicates increased interest in what we're doing, because you have to maintain a certain number of members who check the little box when they register that they are a member of this commission, committee, division, depending on what it is. And I don't know what our membership is right now. Do you?
432.
432. So, and there's at least 3 people out there that would like to be. Okay? So we're growing by leaps and bounds over the years. So it's a very large interest group. By the way, the Midwest Basic Course Directors Conference also started to grow geographically to the point where we were getting people from all over the country, and so we're now just the basic course. The basic course directors conference, and this year we're meeting in Vegas. So if you'd like to join us in Vegas, that would be great. Because I'll leave my chair open.
Say the dates.
Say the dates. And it's last weekend of January, I believe.
That Sunday is February 1st, I think, or that Monday is February 1st.
So the very last weekend of January. And if you're interested in that, Sam runs a listserv. You could probably email Sam Wallace and or see him after this conference, and we'll get you the information. But again, spreading the word is what we do, and that's a big part of what we do in this conference.
Anybody else want to speak to the issue of the history of the division?
I just want to point out the importance of the division. You can all hear me, right? I don't need the microphone. I'm a former high school teacher. I can talk as loud as I need to. The numbers, I think, are indicative in the changes that have come about. We're a pretty forward-thinking kind of group, and we do build on the past, but we're always looking at the future. So I think that's been why we've gone from the Midwest Basic Course to the Basic Course Conference. But also, we've really struggled to make sure that people are aware of the importance of the basic course. I can tell you that I don't know the numbers anymore, but we get a lot of our majors in communication from the basic course because they come there and they find a place that they enjoy doing what they're doing and they enjoy learning, and so it's a good place for us to be. So the evolution of the basic course has been a part of the evolution of the discipline itself.
I just want to add that there are 2 resources that I think are very important to the history, and that is the series of surveys that have been done about the basic course from 68 onward, and also the Basic Communication Course Annual. You can see the development of research with regard to the basic course and the Basic Communication Course Annual published by American Press.
And I think our next question, too, will provide some opportunity for those who have worked on any of the surveys to chime in with their understanding as we pick up the issue of what are the major themes and contributions of the basic course division and the basic course over its history. And I think we'll talk with that about the kind of trajectory, the courses, where it started and how it has developed, and some of the issues that people have worked with, even at their own institutions, as they've watched the course evolve and the topics at our conventions evolve. This is clearly an issue of stability and change, because you'll see some of the course titles. I could pick up an SCA directory and see some convention sessions around similar issues, but then there's all sorts of new issues involved too.
Yeah, indeed, the link between the historical development and then the next question, which we are to collaboratively address, is real clear. The next question is, what are the major themes and contributions of the basic course to the discipline and to society, those kinds of things. And indeed, the basic course survey article that I am now working on makes a valuable contribution to that, and I can introduce that just a little bit to you. Right now, in review, and hopefully in press and comment soon, is the 8th in the series of surveys of the basic course that began in 1968. I was not there then. Right. Jim Gibson did it, and indeed, Jim Gibson stayed on board working on it historically for about the first 5 iterations. And I was brought on board with my colleague Roy Burko in 1999, and so now we are at the 3rd one. And what this in their prescience at that time, what they said they wanted to do, they envisioned regular checkups to monitor both the content, nature, future, value, those kinds of things of the basic course, which was a really good thing to do. So we have completed it again, and I would call on, if you don't mind, my two colleagues who are co-authoring that with me to very quickly say, hey, this is what we did and how we did it, and then also what did we learn at this time.
Thanks, Sherry. First and foremost, we supplied our respondents with the definition of the basic communication course, and it's the same definition that we've been using from the very beginning. And it's that course that is generally required as an introductory course to the discipline. We asked the respondents to pick one course. So if they offered multiple courses as their basic course, we said pick one and think about it as you answer these questions. And generally speaking, it's the largest of those. We did a stratified random sampling of 2- and 4-year institutions, and we did it this way this time because in previous studies we hadn't differentiated between the 2- and 4-year institutions, and we received some feedback saying, you know, it would be kind of interesting to see what the issues of import are with both of those, or separately with those. So we did a stratified random sampling. We took 40% of each type from each school. We did this across the United States and Puerto Rico, and I'll let David talk more about the results from that study, but just recognizing that we asked them questions based on a very expanded, I think it was a significantly expanded version of previous surveys that covered a lot of different areas that I won't list for you at this time. We did have 34% response overall from both the 2- and 4-year. It wasn't as high of a response rate as we would have liked. Obviously, we wanted something like 50, but it was actually a better response rate than the previous 2 studies. So, David, if you'd like to tell them a little bit about what we found.
We have copies of the results. There are many specific tables that you may be interested in. They're here, and as long as those copies last, we're happy for you to take them and hope you will. I think the most insightful things that we could share in this limited time is to simply point to some important longitudinal results, because we were attempting to not only collect this specific data at this juncture, but also to look across the studies to see what can we discover. And there are just 2 or 3 things I would highlight. First of all, the course remains healthy at both 2- and 4-year institutions. It has a significant presence in general education. The primary orientation continues to be public speaking, although you see a bit of a shift in that more 2-year colleges use a hybrid approach, and 4-year institutions tend to prefer a public speaking approach. There are other approaches, but those 2 approaches dominate. In addition, I think that it's interesting to note that textbooks have a completely new face in this study than we've seen previously. Some textbook titles that we saw in the most adopted list are not there any longer, but more importantly than that, what we see is that individual institutions have begun to develop their own textbooks. And this seems to be emerging, and I think, of course, the influence of technology is also going to significantly impact that. The final thing I'll highlight is that there is a significant presence of technology, and particularly teaching online. While it remains controversial with some folks, this seems to be an emerging model, and we're seeing much more presence of that, and that's evident in this survey.
I'd like to add a few things to the discussion at this point. Of course, the basic course is the bread and butter of a lot of departments, and one of the reasons why a lot of departments even exist is because they have large multiple section courses that they're able to offer. And over the years, I think, as I go back in my historical perspective of going to conferences, the very first one I attended was in 1969 at Purdue University. And I look back at some of the themes and ideas that were being discussed then are still some of the themes that are being discussed now. But I think more importantly is the recognition of the importance of the basic course. Yes. How we select basic course directors, how we decide who should be in that responsibility, because it is an important responsibility for that individual to not only supervise people, but also to make sure that that course is well respected across campus. We're going through a lot of assessment issues, and I think a lot of downsizing, and sometimes the basic course is one of those things that is hit as a possible reduction, saying that we should eliminate, the communication requirement, or they're dropping it off of the requirement and asking to reinstate it and give justification for it. So I think that's one of the things. I also went back and I kind of listed a bunch of topic areas and specific topic areas that were discussed over the years. And I think one of them came out, what is the basic course? We had a real difficult time defining what it is. And so we discuss it and try to figure out, well, what is unique about it? What makes it function the way it should function? And what kinds of things should be included in a basic course? And of course, we know that there's public speaking intro courses, the hybrid course, which is relatively new, came out about probably 1950, 1960 with the basic course with Keltner's book, was one of the first hybrid course textbooks, and then after that followed with Bill Brooks's book in the hybrid market, and kind of the offshoot of that. And I think part of that was because of Berlow's work with communication theory, said, well, maybe it's more than just public speaking. So we started really getting into the hybrid. Should we include nonverbal? Should we include intercultural things? Should we include interviewing? Should we include small group, language as a part of the course, and so forth? So a lot of different things have changed over the years, and the basic course directors would get together at these various conferences, and then eventually the Midwest Conference has been suggested broke into the division that we now have, but there are also divisions in the various regional organizations, and some meet every other year, some meet each year, depending on the association. So it is something that I think is critically valuable. As a department chair now, it's one of the courses that we have to look at because it gives us the tuition dollars to be able to get GTAs into the program and so forth. Let me just give you a couple other things that we discussed over the years, and then maybe people can enter in on it as well. Why should we have a basic course? What's the importance of it? How many speeches should be in the course? Should it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or more? Is organization important? All right. Why is it necessary? Are textbooks necessary? Is there too much pedagogy out there or too little? Who should be the director of the basic course? What does the job require? Assessment, which is now becoming more and more predominant, but over the years it was discussed as to how do we assess what we're doing, and who, why, when, sort of questions. Should the basic course be required? Can we effectively evaluate speeches? TA training was a big topic for a lot of folks who were in Research 1 type institutions. Adjunct faculty was another major issue. How do we deal with them? How do we incorporate them into the department? How do we incorporate them into the basic course and take ownership of it? Should PowerPoint be allowed? All right. Basic course in the 19th century, the 20th century, the 21st century. Here's a comical one. Who is Richard Weaver? That's an inside joke, but I would get that. Technology. How should it be used? When should it be used? How do we use it as a method for instruction? Online courses, web-based courses, instructor evals. How important are they? When should they be done? Why do we exist?
What is the meaning of life? Right. What is communication?
Should the hybrid course be dropped? Should there be 1 test, 2 tests, 3 tests, no tests? Should we have a certification requirement for the basic course? This is something we were discussing many, many times. Should the basic course be certified, and so that each department could justify that it was certified by the National Association? What is the best method to teach the basic course? Mass lecture, recitation, discussion, individual modules, PSI. Textbooks should be cheaper. Why do they cost so much? Should speeches be videotaped? How to develop an effective speech lab? Do textbooks have too many pictures? Are the pictures only a way to show diversity? Do students and instructors actually use the pedagogical materials that are provided by publishers? How to use Facebook? And how does it affect teacher credibility? Is email the best way to communicate with your students? Test out procedures. What should they be? The basic course has changed. How has it changed? How much theory should be in the basic course? Distant ed. Does it work? Can the basic course be delivered by a distant education? And then best practices. So those are some of the themes that were discussed, and of course you could go into broader areas of it, but a lot of these issues keep coming back. But they're critically important. And I think they're issues because we're coming up with different answers. Our research is getting more sophisticated. And as a result of that, I think our basic course is really the backbone of our field. And as a result, that's why 400 and some individuals have become a part of this group. I've said way too much.
No.
Those are fun. Those are good.
I had no idea you were paying that much attention at those conferences.
I wasn't either.
Any other voices want to weigh in on the kind of looking backward before we move to
Don't say I covered it all.
the state of the art?
I just wanted to add, our department head told us the other day that the basic course pays for all of the courses in our summer.
Yeah.
Every time we offer summer courses, it's the basic course that pays for everything else. So we could have smaller classes in the other areas because we have the basic course that's full.
The basic course as workhorse in a department.
I don't know if this fits here or not, but one thing that I've observed, again, this is my perspective, I don't have the data to support it necessarily, but as I've been a member of this since 75, when I was the assistant basic course director for Judy Pearson, and Paul hired me at Iowa State, and they started getting me to go to this and get interested in the basic course, so it's their fault. Is that when we first started coming, almost all the panels, as I recall, were paper-based. They were the traditional 5 people, each read a paper, presented a paper, critiqued the paper. They were mostly research, database kinds of things. And as we move, as I look now, and it's been a slow, gradual change, is that a lot of the panels at NCA now are discussion panels, where you have a panel of experts or panel who prepare ideas, and they present for 20, 30 minutes, and then we open it up to discussion, and which I think is great. But that's been a change, and I think that maybe it's been a contribution of our panel that's kept it fresh, not our panel, I mean our division, that has kept the division fresh and has attracted people. At the same time, I'm wondering if we've lost something by getting away from the data-based research papers, as far as continuing to improve and increase the research base on which we on which we can make our decisions, on which our discussions can and maybe should be based. So that's kind of an observation. It's not necessarily an indictment or anything, but it's a question. What's the balance between the discussion panels and how we do things and sharing ideas, which is critical to our division and a contribution to our membership, and the research base, which informs those discussions and gives us credibility to people outside of our division.
As a textbook author, I would point out that when we tried to do a chapter on delivery, tried to find some research on delivery since 1936.
Or listening.
I think it's interesting that at this morning's panel of the Basic Course Annual, something David pointed out and something I hadn't thought about before. In the beginning with the Basic Course Annual, when Larry Hugenberg was the editor, it was primarily thought pieces, philosophical pieces. Yet we have seen, and so this is just sort of the opposite of what you've observed happening at these conferences. That publication has moved more in the direction of data-based empirical research. And David, you might want to talk a little bit about some of those things that you've seen that have been some research contributions to the basic course.
Well, I think it's important, and maybe this is a handoff to Sherry and Steve, in that a lot of empirical research with regard to the basic courses come out of Illinois State, and there are a number of those pieces represented in the Basic Communication Course Annual. And the latest edition will also have some interesting database studies. And I would like if I could, to just hand off to Steve and Sherry, and maybe you speak to that, given that I think your work has been primary in that regard.
What a great panel. I'm a little freaked out, as a matter of fact, to be handed the mic when we're talking about scholarship in the basic course. But, I think one of the ways that we've approached it, David, is that we've taken what many of the people on this panel have argued is a responsibility of our discipline and those that are involved in the basic course in developing pedagogical content knowledge and looking at the best ways to teach the basic course, what are the most effective pedagogies depending on student learning outcomes that we're interested in. And recently we focused in particular on things like critical thinking, information literacy skill development, overall communication skill development, but other competencies like civic and political engagement. And I think the approach that kind of sums up what we found over the last several years, and a lot of that research, is that we assume, hey, we were using, not anymore, but several years ago, using a very popular public speaking text. I won't say any names here, but it was pretty popular. It was out there. And it talked about things like critical thinking. It mentioned it, defined it, and other stuff. And I think we can kind of assume, or we tend to assume that, well, we've got chapters on this, so the students must be learning that.
Right.
Yeah, that's obviously not what was happening. What we found in the research that we've done on things like critical thinking, information literacy, and civic engagement is that if we're not intentional about developing those skills in students, giving them a chapter on, identifying fallacies and saying good luck, go for it, isn't going to work. They're not going to develop those skills. They're not going to develop those outcomes. So we have to be very intentional in our pedagogy. We have to focus on and look and evaluate our teaching practices to identify what works and what doesn't. And then ultimately we have to use things like the basic course annual as a mechanism to share that with others and build that scholarly commitment.
One of the things that we did when we came to ISU was we walked into a program that was a required element of general education at Illinois State University. And so much of the work that we did and have published has been because of a challenge that the university gave to us and a call to deliver general education to every student who comes through our university in the first year. So we service over 3,400 students a year. And so we had to come up with mechanisms and ways to train our instructors how to deliver that course in a pedagogically sound way and then to assess it. So we started doing portfolio assessment and speech evaluation training and all of those things. And it was born out of the challenge that we were given by our university and the role that we played in general education. And so to sort of go over some of the other questions that we're going to talk about, I wanted to talk about our unique role and what we have to offer in general education. And I think our greatest resource is in the content that we teach and the skills that we offer, and that we are uniquely placed within our universities to be the one course that each student should have to take. And because of our content, because we can prepare our students for their personal lives, for their academic lives, for their professional lives, and their social and civic lives. And if we think about that responsibility, then we would no longer have to offer those courses that were survey courses to try to get students into the major. We would have all of those students come through our doors in the first place. But with that comes great responsibility in providing teacher training programs and assessing these skills in the course. And so we don't talk about a public speaking course or a hybrid course. We talk about teaching students about critical thinking, about ethical communication, about the skills that they're going to need from day one in their academic careers and then into their professional lives. And then we extend that to talk about how students should become citizens in a democracy and how they should use these communication skills that we have to offer to become better informed citizens and use communication for the common good.
I think as we're looking... as we're looking at the state of the art, I would kind of like to go ahead and go down the table and have everybody talk about what is the basic course at their institution, or the coolest thing about our basic course where we are. So a little bit of context, and then what you're really excited about in terms of your particular context. Do you want to start?
Actually, I'll let Don describe, because we're both from the same place and he runs the course. So go ahead.
We have a somewhat unique situation is that we have essentially three modules. They're 1 credit hours each. They run for 5 weeks. So the idea is that a student could take them any time in their career. Hopefully a student would take it when it's time when needed for that particular student, and therefore the course would be more relevant. For example, we teach an interviewing class that focuses primarily on employment interviewing. We really found that was problematic for a first-year student who didn't even know their major to talk about putting a resume together and think about it researching jobs and so forth. But as a second semester junior or senior who is about to enter the job market or look for an internship, those skills become immediately relevant and usable immediately. It seems to work pretty well. The problem is it's a 1 credit hour course, so it's not taken as seriously as a 3 credit hour course. And besides, the Gen Ed program is being under review and being changed as we speak, and the modules will probably go away and become some kind of traditional or more traditional 3 credit hour course. So anything I say about our program is kind of unique and fun and works, it's going away. And we're back to what everybody else does, because that's what everybody else understands, which is fine, but it's different than what we do now. It's a hybrid kind of offering.
We also offer a hybrid course. I think the attempt that we make in our course is to make the content immediately relevant to students. And so we are particularly interested in helping students think about communication as not then and there, but here and now, and how it can make a difference in their present context and the ways in which it can be applicable to their academic and personal pursuits. So that's really where we try to make it. It is a hybrid course. Much of the traditional content is there, but it's the application that we're seeking to make that we find the most unique.
Our course is a hybrid course. It's a liberal arts offering that's required of all students. I think, like with David's course, it's the application. I think that we do a better job than a lot of the liberal arts core courses in making students aware of success outside the classroom. I think in too many of our classrooms we are gearing everything that we do to academic success. And our overall goal has been, for the last 20 years at least, that the basic course in communication is the one that prepares students for the world inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom. Very practical kinds of application. I'm always amazed at how many new majors we get because of the basic course.
I'm so excited about the state of the basic course at Kent State University. I'm extremely proud of some of the decisions that have been made regarding that course, and I've been privileged to direct it now, going on my 6th year. We have, I'm not going to tell you everything because we've just done so many new things, but some of the very latest developments and some of the things that we're going to be doing into the near future. This semester we're pilot testing a linked learning community section whereby all of our first-year business majors are also taking our basic communication course at the same time. And for about 6 or 7 of those sections, they're taking them together. So it's a true linked situation. We have partnered with the business college and developed the content for the course around what we believe they need from this. I sort of was challenged to think about this last year at one of the sessions at NCA, and I said, you know what, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to walk across the campus, I'm going to introduce myself to the business school, and I'm going to say, look, we really depend on you, on your happiness. We want you to be very happy with what we're doing. I think it's time that we find out, are you happy with us? So we had a very nice conversation. They love the fact that our students take this class, but they also love that I actually consulted with them. I said, look, we're not going to compromise anything really, but what I want to make sure we're doing is satisfying your needs to the best of our ability. So we came up with this idea of a linked learning community, and we're testing it this semester, and the preliminary data is extremely encouraging. The students believe that the course is very relevant. And they're seeing now those linkages. They're taking the basic course, their first semester business course, and their first year seminar as a community, and they're having a good time with that. We're also pilot testing a PSI, or personalized system of instruction, informed section. And it is amazing. We have our best majors interning in a section of that. They're working with small groups of people within that section. I won't go into all the details except to say that the interns take this for credit. It looks fabulous on their resume. And the students in that particular large section, we've not lost any of them. So there are retention possibilities associated with this that right now are extremely exciting. All of those students have taken their post-tests, and we have 1 hour a week they have to spend online in our class and doing a lot of their work online. They're doing everything on time. They're succeeding. We are adopting the Keller plan to the best of our ability, giving them multiple opportunities to succeed. And someone said to me, "Barb, aren't you afraid of grade inflation?" I said, "Yeah, ain't it great?" I said, "My goodness, yes, I want grade inflation in the basic course. I want them to master the material. I want them to go back into the textbook, read it again, study again, take another test. I don't care if the highest grade counts, as long as they're getting better and as long as their speeches are improving. They're doing them multiple times for better grades. I think that's a win-win situation." But there's also something else that's very exciting about Kent State University that I'm personally very proud of. They have recently agreed to hire me in the future as a distanced manager of the basic communication course. I'll actually be moving out of the Kent area. I'll be living in the Baltimore area, and they're actually having me manage this from a distance. And they love the idea. I gave them this proposal. They said, "Oh my God, Barb, this is going to work beautifully." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to be a distance administrator. It's going to give all of my time just to the basic communication course. That's going to be my full-time job." And I'm so excited about that and about the future for Kent State's basic course.
So at our university, I'm not the basic course director. I'm head of the department, but I know an awful lot about what's going on there. And the one unique thing that we did is we started online public speaking class long ago. And we had some very amusing experiences with it. Like at first we made the students videotape their speeches, but they had to do it like this guy back here who's doing it for us. He had to do it behind the audience so we could make sure they had like 8 people in the audience, this kind of thing. One of the first ones the students turned in, there was an unusually hairy member of the group. Yeah, the family dog was one of the 8. On another one, the film starts off with heavy-duty applause. There are 20 people applauding like mad. The background changes. The speech starts. The speech gets done. The background changes back. Thunderous applause again. Yeah, she edited the tape to make it look like she had a great big crowd and that they were thrilled by everything she said. So we learned lots of stuff about their trickery. And we have made it a very successful thing so that quite a few people now take the online version of the course as well. The rest of ours is traditional, but we've got at least 2,500 who take it every year, so it's a big operation. And we really focus on training the TAs because many of them, we have a doctoral program, so they're around for 4 years. But the ones who are around for 2, there's so much turnover. You want them to be really good because every bad teacher in there spreads the word to about 100 people a semester, and they're telling everybody on campus that your course is no good and your teachers are no good. And we are tough on our teachers. We actually can them if they don't teach well, sometimes in the middle of the semester. We just take them out of the classroom because they do way too much damage if you leave them in there. So they get really good training so that we don't want people to fail at it, but if they can't do it after that, then they get pulled.
Like Paul, I don't direct the basic course. I direct graduate studies, but I am involved in our basic course, and so feel well positioned to describe it to you just a little bit. In terms of the kinds of courses we offer, we have interpersonal, public speaking, and business and professional. One interesting dynamic right now is that there is a major shift, despite our study saying public speaking is the most popular orientation. There is a shift right now into our business and professional course in terms of enrollment. And that's okay. We go with whatever is going on. And that course is pretty much of a hybrid. You know, the interpersonal part is interviewing and those kinds of things. As I think about our basic course and what is it and what does it do well, I actually see it as a profound service to both the campus and to the department. And it does it in just 2 or 3 different ways I can share with you quickly. First of all, it is supported by a communication lab and a communication center, and all of the basic courses are very integrated into that center. There's pre- and post-testing in every basic course and setting of learning objectives that happens in the communication center with trained TAs. And therefore, the students really self-reflect on what they're doing and how they're doing it. So that's good for both the development of the communication competence of those students, but it's also good from the administrative side for both the department and the campus because we're generating those data, and that's good. We use it to revise pedagogy, but we also use it to support the campus. Like other campuses, as you have all mentioned, it is the cash cow for the department, and that I see that as a good thing. And I appreciated some mention thus far in this program about general education and the role of our basic course in general education. I mean, if I said to raise hands, half the audience would say, yes, we are revising Gen Ed right now. And that's, you know, that's a good thing. I mean, Gen Ed will be rethought, reinvigorated, and communication will have a significant role therein. And I'm involved in doing that for our campus, as most of you probably are. And one other note in that regard, as Barb and David and I go around because of the basic course survey and we present the results and people talk back to us, the thing that there is the most interest in is the nature of the basic course, the nature of communication in general education. What does it look like? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Those kinds of things are extremely important. And I'm hoping that at the Basic Course Conference and ourselves together, we can really move quickly and develop more information, more understanding to share in this wonderful community about that.
I'll take this one.
Sure.
Well, I've been retired for about 3 years, so I am going to tell you long distance what I know about San Jose State's basic course. First of all, we're very proud of our communication lab, which Beth Von Til has built into something really an important campus-wide resource. And we're very proud of our TA training program, which Deanna Fassett has brought along, and it's, I think, a very sophisticated TA program. Our course, I think it's most like what you were describing at Illinois State, required for every student at the university and a lot of accountability to outside groups. As far as I know, the influence that the argument many of you have heard me make over and over again is that I believe universities should do what other social institutions don't do. So we shouldn't reflect the outside culture. We should fill another gap in culture. I think that communication departments should do what other social science and humanities don't do. And I think the basic course should have a unique mission, as has been mentioned. So I have always been very resistant to courses that could be taken away. In other words, if we begin to teach business communication, the business department could start to offer business communication and so on. And I feel like the basic communication course is the one place that simulates a democracy and where you don't have all nurses in one class and all potential managers in another class, but something where people from different perspectives have to talk to each other. And San Jose State, I don't know how long my voice will last. I live in another state now. But there are a number of people there who share that philosophy, and we try to keep it a course that primarily simulates a public sphere, not a workplace and not a interpersonal or other kind of context. So that's something I'll probably say more about when we get onto some of the what's down the road kind of questions. Sure. But it's a course that I still feel affiliated with through my textbook and so on, and I feel really proud to have been some part of its development. We come pretty strongly out of that philosophy.
First of all, I'm a department chair and also a basic course director, so I'm kind of an unusual breed, I guess, from that standpoint. I've been a basic course director for about 37 years and then department chair now for 20. So it's kind of an interesting blend of things, but the importance of the basic course obviously has played always a major role in what I've done. And I truly admire Barb on the fact that she's going to be a distant administrator. I think my department wishes I might be a distant administrator as well at times. And then some people have thought I retired, so I guess I've got the best of both worlds. But actually, our basic course, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. It's a personalized system of instruction, but we also have traditional, and now we have started recently in the last year an online course. And our directors of the course, actually the people that do the heart and soul of the course, are graduate students. I work with them, but they have the responsibility of working the course, the day-to-day activities. And I try to tell them that we need to start thinking outside the box and looking for different ways of doing things within the context of what we can do given the resources that are available to us. And so we're starting to come up with some, I think, unique ideas of how to approach education in terms of teaching the basic course and being as applied as possible, yet cover some theory. My understanding is that this ought to be a course that gives people some knowledge in various areas of communication on the hopes that they'll take other courses, that it should be the catalyst for them to take, maybe if they're really interested in public speaking, more public speaking. If they're interested in interpersonal, more interpersonal, more small group. I don't think the basic course can do everything, but I think it can open doors to a lot of things. And so that's kind of the approach I've taken.
I'm very proud to be a basic course director. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I can see myself doing it for the next several. At Illinois State University, our course is called Communication as Critical Inquiry. Yes, we do some speeches, but we also give students the opportunity to use their communication skills to articulate and defend their ideas no matter where they are, whether they're in our classroom or whether they're in another classroom or whether they're in a job interview or wherever they are. We teach them about communication competence, communication confidence, using communication ethically. We teach them to become critical consumers and producers of information. So we talk about information literacy, media literacy, visual literacy, and all of this to help them become better citizens in a democracy. And so that's sort of the basis of our course. As I said, we teach over 70-something sections every semester. We have small intact classrooms of 23 students because we feel that it's very important that students come to class prepared, having read something, and ready to talk about it. What better place to learn about communication than to be able to have an opportunity to articulate and defend your ideas? And Steve, you can talk a little bit more about our civic and political engagement and how we incorporate that.
Yeah, I was really, Joe, what you said about the classroom as a site for discourse and bringing together people from multiple perspectives and having them talk about current and controversial issues. Boy, if we can't do that, I don't know who's going to do it. If it doesn't happen in our basic course and if it doesn't happen in communication, it's probably not going to happen. And one of the things that I've been really fired up about over the last 4 years is that we've been participating in a national political engagement project. And that has really taken off in numerous ways, too many ways for me to go into any significant detail here, but I'll give you a few examples of the kinds of things that are going on. Jennifer McDade sitting right down there. We have a couple of graduate students that teach our basic course that are here, and they can certainly talk more about this kind of stuff. But social issues fair, or they go out onto the quad of the campus and they talk. They present, instead of giving persuasive speeches in the classroom, they give them out on the quad about an issue that's important to them and to the campus and to the community. They get involved in things like the Fell Hall Call to Action that's organized by graduate students, putting together multiple sections of our basic course to deal with raising awareness about things like hunger and poverty in our community, and helping out a family. Most recently this semester, 2 weeks into the semester, a family of 8, house burns down, they lose everything, they have nothing. They organize a campaign that's designed to educate the campus community about poverty and issues related to that in our community, and ultimately to raise a number of goods to help that family out. And they did that, and were very successful with it. With the election season last year, our faculty and our students were very involved in voter registration and education. It's amazing to see Sherry Simons on the quad getting students fired up, registering them to vote, telling them about the importance of that, and then also to see the students talking to other students about why it's important to participate in a democracy. So the things that we've done with PAP and that our instructors have done to reinvigorate the basic course and to show the vital role that communication plays in a democracy is amazing to me. And I love you. And we read about you all the time. I'm teaching a seminar in the pedagogy of political engagement, and we talk about those kinds of issues, and it's something that our instructors have really embraced.
Super. And I do want to give anybody who wants to jump in with more of that kind of vision of the idealized basic course, our resources, our contributions, before we turn it over to questions from the group gathered here.
I just wanted to say something about one of the questions we had on here that we were supposed to say something about was what are the greatest resources of the basic course division, and what are the challenges to meeting our goals? And one of the things that I was sitting here thinking about, and actually I passed out a little handout that talks about my thinking up to this point. So if in your copious spare time, if you'd read that, and at the end of that, we'll explain everything I'm about to say. But I think that one of the greatest resources we have in the basic course division is us. And if you think about all the experience and all the talent in this room, it's really quite strong. And if you think about, and most of us are reasonably good looking. So, well, all right, kind of. But even having said that, if you think about the other question was, thanks, I'm here all week. Try the veal. The other question was, what are the challenges to meeting our goals? And again, I would say the answer to that question is us. And in large scale, us. And the reason I say that is in the 30 years or so I've been doing communication, a lot of time has been spent in conversations, in conventions, in faculty meetings, and in the hallway, and largely in the bars, I guess, talking about, well, other people, the other disciplines just don't get us. They don't appreciate us. They don't, it's a very kind of defensive, low self-esteem, and we can deny that, but it's true. It's look in your heart. It's true. Anyway, so one of the things I've been up to the last few weeks is kind of explained in my little handout is that our general education is under construction again, and I'm on the committee to rebuild our basic course. They've given us a charge to revise, come up with something different, and along some guidelines I won't bore you with. But one of the things we were asked to do is consult widely across the campus. And I thought, oh no. But it's been a blast. And one of the things I learned from this is that, I think I'm going to have to go sell this. I didn't have to, without exception, I had to sell it to nobody. It was, people really do appreciate the things we do. And I also thought that they would think that what I'm here to do is say, well, how can giving a speech and using PowerPoint benefit your students? And I almost led with that question, saying, well, maybe that's not everything that, maybe think beyond that. And most of them start out by saying, well, look, I'm interested in collaboration. I'm interested in especially engineering and the sciences. I'm interested in business, for that matter, explaining things. I want my students to be able to explain things to other people, other non-specialists, if they're a specialist, and explain this to non-specialists that need to use the information. You guys can help us do this. And one of the things that the biggest surprise I mentioned in my handout was, I thought, well, first of all, that they were so appreciative of the things that we do and interested in the centrality of what we do to what they do. But also that several people, enough that it really caught my attention, have asked questions about, can we team up? Can we even think about team teaching a class, maybe not the basic course, but maybe, Don and I discussed some possibilities for that, but maybe in a communication across the curriculum kind of thing, can we build on the things we learn in the basic course and then team teach with business or engineering or something, where they would do some kind of guided they would do some kind of presentation of a project they had to do, and the communication person would be in there to help guide that. So, the engineering professor would have to basically sign off on the bridge, because you don't want to drive on a bridge that I've signed off on. So, but it was really, really, it's something I thought was going to be just frightening has been really uplifting and a really mind-expanding experience. So, and I don't think that's unique to my campus. I think people really do appreciate what we do, and we have to do things like Barb did. Go talk to them. And it's amazing how much PR we can do just by asking questions and saying, so, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on a vision of where I think the basic course is going, and start with, I've critiqued the bread and butter metaphor before in other papers, and again, I've always, maybe because I went to undergraduate school in DeKalb, I've always hated the way hybrid was used in, we take hybrids seriously, they're in corn country. But it always seemed to me that what people described as a hybrid course wasn't hybrid at all in any sense of really merging. It was like a unit on interpersonal, and then a few weeks. And I have been thinking about the interpenetrations of public life. And when you're retired, you get to spend a lot of hours watching MSNBC with clips from Fox News and so on. And I really am concerned about the quality of public discourse in this country and the simplicity of it. And I'm concerned about the lack of civility. Right. And it seems to me that, lots of people have talked eloquently about that, but it seems that technology, which again, we can, you can't be pro or against technology in this age, but it seems that there's kind of some interpenetrations occurring between public life and private life, and they're reorienting in different ways so that the genres don't make sense anymore, and the quote, conversation is more of a political event than the public speeches and the interviews and the shouting and interrupting and the things that we see. We've had rules of how to act in public and rules of how to act in private and so on, but we need to rethink all of those. And I think that maybe the best gift that we can give our students, what we uniquely can do that other people don't do, is to give them, to make them aware and reflective about the kinds of transformations and reconfigurations that are happening in the genres and in the media that will be their vehicles for communication. Because we can't anticipate them. I mean, look how many things have happened in our lives, and as we go from my students used to tease me because my cell phone was so big, and then I got a little one, and now people were teasing me in the airport last week because I got these big ones with keyboards, and the things that we expect to merge together, what different media and technologies can do for us. Everyone talks about losing literacy and reading, but we don't listen much anymore, because anytime we watch something on TV, there's something going across the bottom that we're also reading at the same time. It's just a constant kind of chaotic reconfiguration that's changing the dynamics of how we act, and whether we Twitter or tweet during presidential addresses. And someone was texting during the meditation part of my yoga class the other day. We don't do that. But it's
testing Om.
Yeah. Right. So I think giving students a way to think about those changes, and then giving them skills to adapt to the changes that they will have later, would be truly a hybrid course. Because now some of the things that we do in the public sphere draw on principles from interpersonal, and some of the things that we do in private require situations that used to be private aren't so private anymore, and they get picked up and they're on Facebook, and we need to remember that there's a public element to what we're doing. So I would hope that maybe 5 years from now we would have truly created some kind of hybrid course that would be ready to react to the flexibility, to the fact that we know things are going to change now. And it's not because I don't care about the public sphere. It's just I realize it's a moving target, and the students that we're sending out there are going to have to create it using different combinations of tools than what I learned about when in undergraduate school.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Just one more quick thing. In the second review of the basic course survey, a reviewer, and it may be one of you, and your infinite wisdom said we would like for you all to come up with interpretive statements, because this is the 40-year anniversary, and what does it mean and where is it going? Yeah, and I said, oh, wow, you're kidding. I don't feel up to that job. But we worked together and we did that, and some of our recommendations really do reflect some of the comments you're making, and we talked about, yeah, of course it's good. It's a cash cow. That's okay. Let it be a cash cow. But then what is it doing? And we talked about the 21st century communication skills, which are some of those that you were talking about, and that those skills do still need to be there. Our students do need to know and understand that they shouldn't flame on email, that that's not appropriate communication. Keep that under control. But then we also discussed what is near and dear to your heart. We talked about the more esoteric side, which was the course as a vital resource to contemporary society, given the role of communication in this complex society, a complex democracy, as a result of diversity, as a result of globalization and technology. And that's a heavy burden. And I'm thrilled to hear about what you're doing in terms of creativity and what people are doing with technology. But indeed, these sensitivities and this discussion, I hope I can go to that basic course conference. So if we can see that these kinds of ideas do begin to move forward through this division.
And truly, we want to live up to our commitment to open the conversation and not have speakers holding forth. And so please, people who have questions or what you hope to see 5 years out by the time we celebrate the 100th anniversary.
Okay, so we've got a very distinguished panel up there, and as I look across, you're all from universities. Where are the voices of the community colleges? Where are the voices from the small colleges? Where are the people from the community college division? Where are the comm centers division? I'd like to see us in the next 5 years do better reaching out to all of those.
Yes.
We should be partnering up with the people who are in the community college division and doing joint panels. We should be partnering up with the people who are in the comm centers division and doing things together, because they're all doing what we're doing, and we're missing out on that. When we talk about it being the bread and butter, I think public speaking is the bread and butter at a community college. In fact, I know it's not. We're missing some voices here. Maybe it's because I've just been teaching all those critical studies things lately. We're missing some marginalized voices that we need to reach out to much better. That's where I'm going to
Excellent.
It was because of exactly that reaction that we did a lot of work to be sure that we had 2-year and 4-year data in our latest survey, because you are like 100% right.
One of the things that I am discovering in the state of Indiana is this dual credit issue, and I've tried to talk to some of you about this. And what that means is that students take our basic course at a high school and get high school credit for it, and then get college credit for it. So then when they come to my college, my university, they don't have to take it. Wow. And actually, I was just talking to Beth, and this is a major deal in Virginia. It's also very big in Florida and in Texas. And I've just been kind of thrown into this pool to figure out how do we offer the basic course to high school students that's the same equivalent of the course we have on campus, but yet we want high school teachers to teach it. And how are they qualified to do it? And how do we assess their student learning outcomes and compare them to what we're doing at Purdue University Calumet? So I think 5 years, this is not anything we've ever talked about at the Basic Course Directors Conference, and I've been going for 17 years, and I think I missed 2 conferences. I didn't get to North Dakota and Fargo in February. I missed that. And I missed Biloxi because I was pregnant. But and we have never talked about this issue. And apparently, as Beth said, some of her students are coming to Virginia Tech with 38 credit hours.
And this is not AP hours.
These are not AP credits. These are dual enrollment. And so I think in 5 years, this is something that our Indiana State Legislature has mandated that we engage with high schools to offer our basic courses at the high schools, so that college could take 3 years instead of 4 years. And so I hope in 5 years we're talking about that. But I just want to put a blatant plug in today at 3:30. 30. There are several people in the room here. We will be talking about general education assessment and the basic course. So the people on that panel are in the process of assessing their basic course for general ed. Unfortunately, we're at the Palmer House, so you have to walk there, but there are several of us who are on that panel.
Well, that kind of gets at what I'm looking for at a liberal institution, undergraduate institution. I've been chair of the communications department for a while. But I just wanted to ask one question related to outcomes. And that is, how can the basic course be actually associated with or connected to the SACS accreditation program?
To the what? I'm sorry.
We're trying to get a credit. We're
Oh,
trying to
SACS.
maintain our accreditation. So I was thinking that in some instances that the basic course would have to be, could be looked at professionals here in some way as a connecting piece with the accreditation process. Is there any information that you might have about that you'd like to share?
Part of the challenge, I think, is the diversity in in defining the basic course, so that it's hard for NCA or the basic course division to articulate kind of the standards of the basic course. It's certainly a worthwhile conversation to have. It's something we do talk about and try to explore, but that intersection can be a real challenge. Now, NCA is trying to develop their undergraduate program standards even further. They're having conversations at this convention about that can prove useful for an accreditation process.
Well, I was thinking, too, that some of the requirements for the basic course, the learning outcomes are actually tied into some of the requirements for SACS.
Okay.
But yet, no one at our institution that I've met is able to at least articulate how we can make a connection there. And I was thinking the connection would be important.
One way you can make a connection, though, is that if there are any large courses on campus that do a good job of assessment or something like that, believe me, your provost or other upper-level administrators nab onto that so fast because they want to be able to prove to people, not just statistically, but with some story about some course that really does something well. So if you can make it so your basic course does assessment particularly well or has something like that, believe me, you'll get some attention for it.
I am checking my watch, and I want to do one more thing. We have heard 5 years out, maybe a panel on the arguments, the defense of the basic course, given the accreditation requirements. How can we articulate what we are doing in the basic course and how it fits? Talking about high school issues, intersecting more with community colleges. Would the panelists, what's that title you want, 30 years out for somebody to sit in Bill Seiler's chair there to say what they've been talking about in the basic course over the past history. But 5 years out, what title of panel session do you hope that we're having a conversation about in the basic course division? This was not on their Reflect Before You Come list, so it's really a total impromptu I'm tossing to them. Anybody want to jump in? A topic title you hope to see? A panel discussion 5 years out?
Should we do it jetpacks?
I love the things that I've heard that I really like, that resonate, definitely fall in that esoteric area. And they're about the contributions of the basic course. Civility bubbled up in our presentation of the basic course survey recently. What is the basic course doing for those sorts of issues, for democracy, for assuming your role in society? Personally, that resonates with me.
I'd like us to be talking about how we survived in trying economic times. And that's something we've not really talked about too much this morning and is really central with so many of the decisions and those exciting things that I said we're doing at Kent State University. That kind of is that 800-pound gorilla right now in the room. I'd like to be talking about how we met that challenge. And we said, look, yes, we could have been made to shrivel up and go away because of the financial climate. But we rose to the occasion. We got very creative. And we made ourselves eminently relevant. And so instead of in the future having that sort of inferiority complex or apologetic stance, to be very proud and say, look, we really saved the day. We recognized how important the basic course was to the survival of the schools and the colleges, and we did everything humanly possible to ensure its health going into the future, while at the same time maintaining good pedagogy. And I honestly believe we can do those things. Mm-hmm. We can have those relationships across campus. We can make ourselves relevant across campus. We can make ourselves essential. We have that talent. And I agree with Sam that sometimes we are our own worst enemies. But we can, I think 5 years from now, honestly, we can say, you know what? It was touch and go there for a while, but look at what we did, and we should be so very proud. Learn from us.
I think that we are the only course on campus, perhaps the only one discipline on campus where everybody expects us to do our job in 10 weeks or 15 weeks, that we take somebody who has lousy communication skills and make them a polished orator or a wonderful human resource interviewer in 10 weeks, that they now listen well, that they've had no skills for 20 years, but now in 10 weeks we will turn them into a great communicator. And yet, if we did the same thing and told somebody to take 15 weeks of guitar lessons, golf lessons, sculpting, painting, and then assess their ability to create a statue, and we say, well, that's pretty good, but you got a long ways to go, but that's okay, you've only had one course. So my headline for 5 years from now is, what 5 courses should we have every college student take in communication?
I don't know what Yoder's been up to, but we, in one semester, turned our students from Bush to Obama.
And you're saying that's a step in the right direction.
No, I think the thing that we have to do, though, is that we have so many outfits that are going through transitions with general ed. And that is a dangerous situation because you don't find very many programs that gain in that. You find quite a few that lose in that. And I think that especially the stuff that people have been talking about learning outcomes, about civic engagement and all these other things that other departments just don't do, is really kind of the key to our success. That if we can kind of focus on a bunch of things that are fairly visionary, kind of idealistic, but things that other people don't do, that's going to work for us.
Are we going right down the line? Is that what
We'll take any voice wants to jump in here in the last minute and a half.
I see my colleague and friend Judy Pearson, and I would point us all. Hi, Judy. We do an article like about every 3 years or 4 years, and it identifies the centrality of the communication discipline and identifies like themes or why communication instruction is important, coming out of lots and lots of other studies. And I would like to see us take that, and you and I have talked about that, take that and then link it to the basic course. To what extent is the basic course developing and addressing those themes which have been identified as critical needs of a communicator coming out of communication instruction? Mm-hmm.
You're good? You're good?
We're good.
We're done.
We got another one here.
We did.
There's a possibility, just a possibility, that they may do away with the speech requirement. The Med-Ed campus, there's 6 campuses and 7 satellites, and the Med-Ed campus is thinking, yeah, we think we can do without that speech. Radio, X-ray, it's already said, yeah, we don't do away with it. And so we're kind of very tense about this idea of trying to do away with the speech requirement. If you have any research on that, I'd love to take that back to.
We have people who will want to give you a card so that we can work on that. Excellent. I do want to thank our panelists. If you want to be involved, yes, if you want to help the basic course face these challenges, come join us at the business meeting tomorrow, 12:30 in the Madison Room over at the Palmer House. Hope to see some of you there.
Results from the latest study, if you want them.